Hi, everyone. If you're just joining and you're curious, the video we were playing, there's more information about it in the chat, but it's an artist collaboration that DCP has been doing with a couple of arts organizations that focus on water. So check out the link if you're curious. But otherwise, we are going to get started now. And hopefully everyone can see okay. But hi, welcome to the TCP's Waterfront Public Workshop. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So we're going to start off with a intro presentation today. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and mute yourself and turn off video for that portion. But please, if you do have any questions, particularly about the kind of general process of the plan or the timeline, that sort of thing, please go ahead and type those into the chat box. And feel free to introduce yourselves that way too. But then the second part of the program this evening is going to be small group discussions. So you'll be moved over to breakout rooms within Zoom. At that point, please do turn on your mics and video, so we'll be able to participate in discussions for about 45 minutes before we do a wrap up at the end. So yeah, I'm going to hand it over now to Brendan. Kick us off.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brendan Plar, and I'm the Deputy Director of Waterfront and Open Space Planning at the Department of City Planning. And on behalf of the Department of City Planning, I'd like to thank all of you for spending time with us this afternoon and for your interest in the next comprehensive waterfront plan. We're excited to be able to work with you on establishing a collective vision for the city's waterfront for the next 10 years and beyond. Next slide, please. So just a brief agenda. I'm going to go through kind of a general overview of where we are with the planning process right now and the kind of goals for today's workshop. Afterwards, I'll pause briefly to ask if there's any questions about what I just presented or the process going forward. But the bulk of the presentation will be us listening to you. We want to get your kind of local perspective and local knowledge on the kind of issues and goals that will shape the next comprehensive waterfront plan. We'll wrap up by sharing some of the key takeaways that came out of these group discussions and then discuss the next steps for the plan. But one thing I'd like to pause and just discuss or mention very briefly is that I recognize we'll be sharing a lot of information with you all tonight, and my team and I want to make sure that you have access to it. So we'll be recording this introductory presentation, and we'll be posting it on our website, waterfrontplan.nyc, as you see at the bottom of the slide. We'll also share detailed summaries of the breakout discussions with you all, and also post those on the website. So I encourage you all to use our website to share any feedback that you have, especially feedback that comes to you after tonight's meeting. We'll be taking feedback on the preliminary goals for the comprehensive waterfront plan through the end of the fall. Next slide, please. So just to start with some context, New York City is a coastal city, and it has a vast and diverse waterfront. Its waterfront is longer than pretty much any three North American cities' waterfronts that you can put together. And that's not to just brag that New York City is the best. It's expansive, and with that comes lots of issues and challenges, but also opportunities. It may not be a surprise to this group here tonight, but New York City is a coastal city, and that's not necessarily something that all New Yorkers recognize. And with our process and the plan itself, we want to ask ourselves why that's the case and identify ways that we can improve the relationship that all New Yorkers have with the waterfront. Next slide. So just to kind of key in on some of the key differences and the vastness of the city's waterfront, this diversity and variety comes with many different issues and opportunities that need to be carefully discussed and examined. And the issues in ecologically sensitive areas like Alley Pond and Queens, or low density areas like the bungalows and the Rockaways, or the density and high intensity commercial uses of parts of the Upper Bay, all require unique kind of examinations and perspectives and solutions. And that's part of our work here. And that's why we rely so much on the feedback from communities and representatives of these areas so that we can better understand these local conditions. Next slide. So we're now in our process of creating the city's third comprehensive waterfront plan, and this plan will build on the city's first two. The first comprehensive waterfront plan was issued in 1992. It's subtitled Reclaiming the City Edge, and that's exactly what it sought out to do. This plan was released following major shifts away from the industrial use of the waterfront and the subsequent neglect of the shoreline. And this plan outlined how the city could reclaim its waterfront and led to the creation of waterfront public access requirements in zoning. And what that means is that most residential and commercial development since 1992 has been required to, and is required to, build and maintain publicly accessible spaces to and along the waterfront. And this tool has helped expand public access to dozens of locations along the city's waterfront. The city's next comprehensive waterfront plan was released in 2011. It was called Vision 2020. And it reasserted New Yorkers' desire to access the waterfront and proposed additional ways for people to explore and enjoy the waterways. It also, for the first time, outlined strategies to increase the city's resiliency to climate-related events, including coastal storms, sea level rise, and higher temperatures. Now, it's important to note that Vision 2020 was released 18 months before the New York City faced its worst natural disaster. Hurricane Sandy forever altered our knowledge and awareness of the city's vulnerability to climate change. And climate change already creates health hazards as a result of higher temperatures and more frequent and intense storm events. So this notion of wanting to get to the water's edge and protecting the city from climate change are certainly major themes that we've heard so far in shaping the next comprehensive waterfront plan. But as of right now, we don't have even a cover image for that plan because really we're developing the plan as we go. And the content is still very much being determined, and it's being determined through events like tonight's, through lots of public outreach and a very deliberate effort to reach out and hear from all New Yorkers.
I updated the thing. Can you? Oh yeah. Try.
I'm sorry, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself for right now, there'll be plenty of time for questions later. Thank you. Just to touch briefly on outreach, we're kind of in a key period of outreach that's been building on over a year plus. That started with asking big questions, and we asked questions of all New Yorkers, young and old, about what they wanted to see on the waterfront. What were their visions for the waterfront? And we got lots of very creative and exciting responses. beginning in the fall and this past winter, we started taking deeper dives into listening sessions. These are kind of either geographic-based or thematic-based sessions that focused on many topics, from the working waterfront to public access to coastal flood resiliency. Of course, this spring and summer has brought many changes to the city and how we do our work and how we communicate it. So we had to take our engagement efforts online, and this required a lot of kind of creativity and ingenuity. And it was an opportunity for us to work very closely with partners, including groups like the Billion Oyster Project, on educational material that we were posting on our Instagram page and on our website to kind of inform and educate New Yorkers about the various aspects of the city's waterfront, from ecological features to opportunities for boating and improving water quality along water bodies like the Bronx River. This was a very exciting way for us to really showcase all the great work that not just city agencies are doing, but local organizations as well. So we've been building and building to this point where we're just now getting to the point of articulating preliminary strategies. And we call these preliminary strategies because they are very much subject to change through discussions like tonight's. So last month, we released a framework for the comprehensive waterfront plan. And this is not the plan itself. It's just a document that outlines the preliminary issues and goals that the next plan will explore. And really the purpose of tonight is to discuss both of those things. Next slide, please, Corey. So we don't know what the cover of the plan will be. It's likely to have a blue image of the waterfront on it, and likely some waterfront puns, including our use of the term beacons here, which is of course a nautical term for guiding ships out on the water. But for this, it takes a very kind of serious purpose as well. These are beacons meant to, that we are putting out there to help guide our planning process, shape the narrative of the comprehensive waterfront plan, and inform the strategies that will help us achieve the city's collective vision for the waterfront. I'll now kind of quickly go through the next, the 3 beacons that we've identified. So the first beacon is resiliency. So as we plan for the next decade and beyond, we recognize that the inherent risks that we face as a coastal city, and we must adapt our shoreline and our shoreline communities to climate hazards, including coastal flooding, increased precipitation, and higher temperatures. And this work will support our city's ability to bounce forward after a natural disaster while improving quality of life for waterfront communities and all New Yorkers. We must also acknowledge that many coastal communities have suffered from underinvestment and historic exclusion from planning processes. The next comprehensive waterfront plan will address these injustices and advance equitable strategies that reduce the disproportionate effect of climate change on the most vulnerable communities. Next slide, please. The second beacon is equity. Through the next comprehensive waterfront plan, the city will prioritize working with lower income communities and communities of color to ensure their strong role in the planning processes and projects, whether it's for safe and enjoyable access or waterfront infrastructure upgrades to adapting to climate change. New Yorkers deserve equitable access to all the city's waterfront has to offer, from parks to beaches to maritime industrial jobs to affordable and resilient places to live. The third beacon is health. The next comprehensive waterfront plan will recognize the link between the city's environment, equity, and the economy to maximize the health benefits of New York City's waterfronts. And we're looking at health in a number of ways, including the health of the waterways and the health of the communities along the waterfront itself. As I mentioned, we're in kind of new and different times to conduct a plan this broad. The COVID-19 pandemic is something we've taken to heart, not only in our process, but in the plan itself. The pandemic has delivered a shock to every aspect of life in New York City. It has necessitated dramatic shifts in how we conduct outreach and the issues that the next plan will need to address. The pandemic also has dealt an unprecedented blow to the city's economy. While the waterfront is not the primary engine of the city's economy as it was 100 years ago, it does play an important role in the city's ability to create and sustain a diverse mix of jobs, move goods around, and help us get the things that we need, host key infrastructure, support tourism and recreation, and house our population. So as I mentioned, the framework that was released last month and that we'll be collecting feedback on over the next 2 months sets out draft goals that the plan will examine, and they're laid out under 6 broad themes: public access, water quality and natural resources, the working waterfront, ferries, resiliency and climate change, and economic activity. So the first theme is public access. Over the past decade, there have been remarkable strides in expanding public access to the waterfront in all 5 boroughs through a combination of public investment and harnessing private development. As successful as this expansion has been, there are opportunities to do more to connect New Yorkers to the waterfront. So our broad goals for addressing this public access theme are to further expand public access to the waterfront, to improve the design, maintenance, and programming of parks and waterfront public access areas, to promote the stewardship and the relationship between the surrounding communities and these spaces, and to promote opportunities to not just get to the water, but into the water itself. The next topic is water quality and ecology. So New York's harbor is now the cleanest it's been in over 100 years, and that's a great accomplishment. However, there are a range of water quality issues that remain, particularly in the city's most constrained waterways. Addressing these outstanding issues will require significant new investment and identifying new and innovative solutions for addressing water quality issues. Our goals under this topic include making strategic investments to improve water quality, raising awareness about water quality and restoration issues, and advancing efforts to protect and enhance the natural waterfront. The next topic or theme is the working waterfront. We need to support and enhance the health of our working waterfront and the New Yorkers whose livelihoods depend on it. There's an opportunity to transform how freight enters New York City, specifically moving more containerized cargo by ship and rail rather than by truck, which would have the effect of alleviating air pollution and congestion on our roadways. We could also look at improving efficiency and help create good paying jobs in the process. So the goals right now for the working waterfront are advocating for key maritime issues, recognizing that the city is just one of the many players with kind of oversight in the working waterfront. The second goal is increasing the visibility of the working waterfront and its importance to the rest of the city. Just like some New Yorkers don't recognize how New York City is a coastal city, many New Yorkers don't recognize that New York City's working waterfront is plays a vital role, not just in the city's economy, but in the national economy as well. The third goal is to invest in maritime and rail solutions to reduce our reliance on trucking. The next topic is economic activity. So since the last comprehensive waterfront plan was released, public and private investment in the waterfront has helped spur the preservation and creation of housing at all income levels, helps create jobs, preserve and create jobs, as well as open space along the city's waterfront. And there are opportunities to continue to build on this investment and promote a thriving and more inclusive waterfront for all New Yorkers. New York City's shorelines and waterways will also be conduits for green power, hosting green infrastructure and playing an instrumental role in mobilizing and building the green economy. So the related goals to this topic are leveraging the investment in the city's waterfront to address the city's needs for housing, jobs, and open space, to support major investments in infrastructure that spur economic activity throughout the city and the region, and to invest in green technologies and to support the emerging job opportunities. The next topic is ferries. Ferries are an essential mode of transit in the city and the region surrounded by water, and we've learned that especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, many communities are disproportionately underserved by ferries and other forms of waterfront transit. New York City should continue to support the expansion of passenger ferries services, and where feasible and possible, explore opportunities to improve connections with other forms of mass transit. So the goals here, there are two: to support the expansion of ferry services throughout the city, and to strengthen the connections between ferry stops and other forms of transportation, and the communities where these terminals exist. And I should have mentioned that these themes are presented in no particular order, but perhaps the most important and overarching topic of any that we'll be discussing tonight and in the next comprehensive waterfront plan is resiliency and climate change. Adapting the waterfront to the effects of climate change is one of the greatest challenges we face as a city. Sea level rise, flooding caused by extreme rain events, and coastal storms affect different parts of the city in different ways. The risks that we face are not easy to solve, but they do require careful and inclusive planning. So our goals for adapting the city's waterfront include investing in resilient coastal infrastructure, developing maps and data that inform capital projects like coastal infrastructure, and building codes as well, so that we're not just planning for today's storms, but the storms of the future. We're also want to work towards establishing a resilient land use framework to reconcile the need for growth and the need to address flood risk. The fourth goal is to increase community engagement in neighborhood adaptation planning efforts and decision making. The fifth goal is assist households and businesses in coastal about flood risk and to take action. And finally, we want to address challenges with the shoreline permitting process that may actually inhibit more resilient design solutions along the city's shoreline. So this is the last slide in my portion of the presentation. I just want to touch a little bit about where we're going and the overall timeline for the plan. So as I mentioned, through the end of the fall, we'll be holding workshops across the city and taking feedback on the preliminary goals that I just discussed, and we'll continue to discuss in the breakout groups. I should mention that the city charter requires that the comprehensive waterfront plan be released every 10 years, which means that the next comprehensive waterfront plan is due at the end of this year. However, with the interruption that we experienced with the COVID-19 pandemic, in conducting public outreach and really having meaningful conversations with New Yorkers about the future of the city's waterfront, we want to make sure that there's adequate time to hear from New Yorkers, and we're having conversations with the city council on extending the deadline so those conversations can happen. One final thing that I'll note on the comprehensive waterfront plan itself is that the plan itself carries no legal authority. So the power of the plan is really the good ideas that are captured within it, and that's why we rely so much on the feedback that we get from events just like tonight's. This document will be released at the end of this current mayoral administration. We want the ideas that are in this plan to drive that work, as well as the work of the next mayoral administration, and help inform the decisions of that leadership as well. So this is a broad visioning plan. It sets, of course, a vision for the city's waterfront for the next 10 years and beyond. And again, I'd just like to thank you all for spending your time with us tonight.